Welcome everyone to the webinar Video Game Developers Opportunities for Business Cooperation between Poland and Sweden. My name is Daniel Villen, Cluster Manager for Arctic Game, and I have the honor of moderating this. And with that said, I will leave it over to the Ambassador of Poland to Sweden, Madam Ambassador Joanna Hoffman.
Thank you. So, dear participants, speakers, and panelists, I would like to welcome you to a webinar dedicated to the gaming sector, jointly organized by the Polish Embassy in Stockholm and the Foreign Trade Office in Stockholm. Today's meeting is a continuation of the Polish-Swedish cooperation, which started last year, when together with Director Sebastian Magier from the Foreign Trade Office, we met with the representatives of the Swedish gaming sector in the north of Sweden, in Skellefteå. I also had the pleasure of opening an exhibition in the north of Sweden, presenting the success story of the Polish gaming sector to our Swedish friends. It was possible thanks to Daniel, who is the moderator of this webinar. Tack så mycket, Daniel. I believe that Polish-Swedish cooperation in this sector will bring many joint Polish-Swedish projects. Dear participants, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that gaming sector is not only about entertainment, but also about education. This is what we must strive for. It is our ethical obligation to educate young people to improve their knowledge of history, science, and culture through the use of available tools. It is thanks to you that computer games can have a high educational value. Medical professions can also benefit from appropriate gaming projects that could help relieve psychological problems of children, teach them empathy, respect, and increase their knowledge of the world. I appeal to all game developers. It is you who have an important role in shaping the personality of the youngest users of your products, increase their knowledge and empathy. You can add your input into the process of creating healthy societies, which, thanks to your games, will develop and benefit from the knowledge they acquire. I really believe that together with our Swedish colleagues, we can create through the gaming sector a new reality in which our societies will benefit from the concept of respect and justice and the pursuit of knowledge in the different fields. Thank you, and I wish you very productive and interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. I think we will have a few words from Sebastian as well, if I'm correct. So please, Sebastian, continue.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Yes, on behalf of the Polish Trade Office in Stockholm, I'm very happy to welcome you to this webinar on the gaming industry and its challenges and possibilities of cooperation between Poland and Sweden. I'm very happy because it's been more than a year we have started this discussion with Polish and Swedish game developers institutions, and that's thanks to Daniel, who we met last year in Skellefteå, in Arctic Gaming Lab there, that we have kick-started this process. And I'm very happy that we will discuss those possibilities today, and also not only about the challenges in Sweden and in Poland, but also talking about the larger spectrum of collaboration within the European Union, as we talked about in May in Skellefteå, where we discuss how to compete, how Europe, wider Europe can compete against competitors in the United States and China to actually win the fight for the market, the global market. So that was very inspiring, and I hope that we will continue with this discussion today to maybe try to appeal to some policy development in the European Union for the future. I'm also very happy that we'll talk about issues of equality within the sector. I know that this is a challenge sometimes, and we hope that there will be exchange of good models and good practices to bring it about even more in both countries. So that is really something interesting. And then I hope this webinar will give us impetus to further cooperation, maybe some interesting projects, business projects regarding gaming industry, where we know that both Sweden and Poland are growing rapidly when it comes to the gaming industry. And of course, there's competition, but we should also look possibilities of collaboration that will bring added value to our business adventures. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you once again for being able to welcome you. And I wish you a very, very good webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. And I might add as well that it's the ambassadors and Sebastian's visit up in Skellefteå that actually started this collaboration as well. That's what happens when nation visits each other and see what's going on. And with that said, we are moving to our first keynote speaker, which is Piotr Kubinski, an experienced R&D expert and video game producer that runs Goat Games, a game dev studio based in Warsaw, and teaches digital humanities at the University of Warsaw. Also author of the 2016 book, Video Game Poetics, in Polish, I might add. But what are you saying, Piotr? Would we have that in English soon?
Maybe one day, to put it like this. Thank you. Thank you for this introduction. Thank you very much. It's a great honor and a great pleasure to be here. Let me just make sure if you can see this small presentation that I prepared for today. And since the title of this very useful and I believe truly necessary event is Video Game Developers: Opportunities for Business Cooperation between Poland and Sweden, I asked myself what kind of introduction could be beneficial for the participants of such an event. And as a result, I came to the conclusion it would be best if I concentrated on selected aspects of the specificity of the Polish game industry. And at the same time, since the time slot for this presentation is rather limited to several minutes, this introduction obviously will have to concentrate on very selected aspects of Polish market. So that's the topic, and who am I? Very shortly, as you mentioned, thank you for that. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Warsaw, where I conduct research dedicated to video games. My PhD was dedicated to poetics of video games, and at the same time, I work as the CEO and head of studio at Goat Games, which is quite a unique studio, I guess, since it was established by Movie Games, which is a Polish game producer and publisher, and by Robert Lewandowski, whom I don't think I need to introduce. I don't want to use this limited time to talk about my studio. Let me just say that we have recently announced our first game, which is Star Strikers Galactic Soccer, and simultaneously we are working on another title that hasn't been announced yet. So if you're interested in talking about the studio, the titles, possible cooperation, I'd be happy to chat after the event. But now let me get straight to the topic. So what could be included in this presentation, but is not? First of all, I guess the scale of Polish games industry. You could probably imagine that hypothetically, I could bring you some data that would be a result of some industry reports. And for example, I could mention that according to the Game Industry of Poland report 2021, published by Polish Agency for Enterprise Development in August 2021, there were around 470 active game producers and publishers in Poland. But as I said, that's not the part of this presentation. So to give you a better view, I could also mention that, for example, according to the same source, there were 12,110 people working in the game production sector in Poland 1 year ago. We could go on and on with such numbers, but I feel like since there is not enough time for that, I'd like to rather use this time to suggest first, if you want to have a closer, decent perspective, go and grab these reports by yourself and explore these findings. Here are just two sources that I recommend if you're interested in getting to know Polish industry better. And let me just add that I expect that during the conference called GIG, which stands for Games Industry Conference, that takes place in Poznań this weekend, I expect that there will be published another report dedicated to Polish game industry salaries. So instead of these numbers, I'd like to share a perspective on a topic which is of great importance, I guess, and has a huge impact on the industry, and that is educating new specialists. And I'd like to use this opportunity to share my personal perspective, since I'm an academic who teaches future game developers, and at the same time, I'm a head of studio who actively recruits employees. As you probably all know, one of the biggest challenges in the game industry, I guess, not only in Poland, but probably in Poland specifically, is that we still need more and more skilled workers. According to quoted report in 2021, the year-over-year increase of number of employees in the sector was 24%. But despite that spectacular growth, the needs are still enormous. So what I'd like to point out, and I guess something that could be interesting for our friends from Sweden, is how Polish game industry deals with it and how educational surrounding changes to answer these needs. According to Indie Games Poland, organization that focuses on indie games in Poland, there were 71 degree courses offered in Poland around about last year. The demand, however, is still very big, and every year there are new propositions for the students in Poland that want to develop their careers in the game industry. And let me just say that personally, I have two co-workers in Gold Games who are game dev graduates, and I'm very happy with their performance. I've been so happy that I've even recruited the third one, and he has joined us yesterday. Obviously, it's anecdotal evidence, so let's not overestimate it. But in my perspective, Polish educational offer is getting more and more effective, more and more focused on the sector's needs. And that means the supply of new workers is very likely to be more and more satisfying for game studios in Poland, and probably not only in Poland. Especially if you combine it with a rather wide range of conferences and educational initiatives in Poland, like GIG, like Digital Dragons or Digital Dragons Academy. And this perspective of having more and more, not only talented, but also truly educated young game developers entering the industry is one of the brightest aspects of current specificity of Polish game industry that I wanted to point out during this meeting. Thank you for your time, which I guess is over for me. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them later during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Piotr. And I think when it comes to focusing on education, I mean, talent is, of course, the gold and the energy for our industry. So that's one other thing that is a mutual interest for Sweden and Poland, of course. With that, we will move over to Sweden swiftly, to Johanna Nylander, Head of Policy and Analytics at the Swedish Games Industry Association. Working for the industry with policy and public affairs to create a better environment and international growth for Swedish game developers, and to educate local policymakers on games and the needs of our industry. Johanna has a background in the mobile games industry and also as a columnist in local media, which I didn't know prior to this, Johanna. So with that said, please go ahead.
Thank you. So do you see my slides?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Oh, great. Perfect. So I will just start with a bit about the background about the Swedish games industry. So maybe just 20 years ago or 15 years ago, this was probably what most people were connecting Sweden with, safe cars, cheesy pop music, and furnitures in flat boxes. But if you look today, we have, these are the major exports of the Swedish industry. We have Minecraft on the left and the candy from Candy Crush on the right. And just to give a bit of a background of how the the Swedish games industry looks, we have a broad variety of games created here. We have everything from the really large AAA titles, Battlefield, Star Wars games, Just Cause series, a lot of big screen major franchises. This compilation of games is actually a couple of years old, so maybe they're not as relevant yet. But apart from the big AAA titles, we also have a lot of mobile games, we have a lot of indie games, we have games on all major platforms in all major genres. And of course, education is really important for us as well, but I will, even if Piotr referred to report, show some numbers as well, just to see how the growth in Sweden has been during the last 10 years. Everything is pointing up. We are big in turnover, and we can especially see that some of the major groups of companies based in Sweden have done a lot of success during the recent years. Embracing Group, for example, is the largest group of company in Sweden. We have around 667 companies. So these are numbers from 2 years ago. We are looking into the data for this year at the moment. And I think I can say safely that we will be a bit over than 800 companies now. Most of them are small, but around half of them are active and employs a handful of people at least. But when it comes to employees, we are around half the size of Poland, I think. So we are still struggling with talent, but it's still growing. It's really one of our main challenges within the Swedish industry to find people to employ, to find talent, and to have a good to continue work within the ecosystem and to see growth in that way as well. Compared to the rest of Europe, we are in top 3 in turnover, but in top 5 to 6 in terms of employees. And some of probably the main recipe for success. We have quite good technological infrastructure here. We have cheap electricity up in the north. We have a good broadband connections along the country. We have those long dark winters that made it probably a bit probably quite important for creativity in a way, because especially there isn't so much other things to do than sitting at home and inside, and there's the possibility to create on your computer has been really important. It's also quite a small country, so we need to create for a larger market from the beginning. We don't have our own home market for games. We need to do export from the beginning. It's a lot of teamwork as well to create games, and combined with a good social safety net, and probably what you would call jantelagen in Sweden, but not be too bragging about yourself is also probably one of the good things for creating games in the beginning. So that's just really short about Sweden, and I hope to hear more good around this in the panel to come. And also will be happy to answer questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johanna. So with this cheap energy up in the north, perhaps people would start migrating up here because that's a huge problem everywhere, I guess, now. And I can also let you know that with the cold and dark winters, yes, we know how to make games, and also babies. We are good at both those things. So it's an interesting part of the world. To be a bit more on the right side of the topic, though, we are moving over to a panel. And I'm proud to say we have a fantastic panel ahead of us today with a few people that are new to me and a few people that are sort of industry giants that I look up to and that are really important for our industry. So I thought it could be appropriate for you to introduce yourself just shortly. We have Linn-Marie Edlund, we have Linda Kiby-Zetterman, we have Paulina Pizziol, and we have Mikolaj, we have Edvard, and myself as a moderator. And before we continue with the questions and discussions, perhaps you could start by introducing yourself. We'll start with you, Linn-Marie.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Yeah, my name is Linn-Marie. I work for Amplifier Game Invest, part of the Embracer Group. I am from the north part of Sweden, so that's why I laughed a little bit for Johanna's presentation. I've been in the industry for about 7 years now, and I have worked a little bit with Arctic Game Lab in the beginning.
So nice to have you here. Linda.
Hello, everyone. I've been working with games for 16 years at Avalanche, at Paradox, and then I started Warpzone Studios, which is run by me and my husband, first and foremost. Right now we are doing some consultancy work at Mojang, and it's very interesting.
Really nice to have you. Paulina, welcome.
Welcome. Hi, my name is Paulina Pezio, and I'm the game acceleration manager at Digital Dragons, which is a brand dedicated to supporting game industry in Poland, but also abroad, and helping those studios find some opportunities to reach for know-how from abroad, from a variety of projects we take part in. And I have been in the industry for almost 6 years. So I started with our B2B conference, but now I've moved to the accelerator, where we help those indie studios reach their dreams and find a publisher or an investor. Thank you for having me here.
Lovely, great addition to this panel. Mikolaj, please.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you. My name is Mikołaj Golubiewski. I'm based in Warsaw, representing Deep Dive, a startup in game dev, which we started a little bit more than a year ago. So we're very fresh and actually still very small, preparing our first game.
Great, nice to have you. And Edward.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you. Nice to meet you. I am representative of mobile gaming, mostly mobile gaming, but since 2010, I'm involved in gaming, starting from social path. I started together with Nasza Klasa, a gaming platform back in 2010, and then moved forward into mobile gaming through the years. Right now, we are a company that is based on our alternative Polish exchange, stock exchange market. We did tens of games, and since 2021, we are also in the NFT market as firstly as a work for hire to make NFT games, and that's how we entered this, let's say, new wave for markets. And thank you very much for having me here.
It's our pleasure. And with that said, I haven't left anyone outside the panel that should be introduced, right? Just making sure. So to start with, I think it was a really interesting intro we got from Madam Ambassador, because when it comes to how we introduce the industry, from a political standpoint, we often hear the other sides, the problematic side, the problem with the games industry polluting young minds rather than developing them. What are your views on that? Anyone want to start with that?
Maybe I can start and say that we are lucky in Poland that our government has realized that the industry is so much more than let's say, stupid entertainment for kids very early on. And we have been really lucky to have the support of both our government and local authorities in supporting the industry, and realizing that it is much more than just plain entertainment, and it brings a lot of talent, and it helps grow. It helps us grow as a hotspot kind of this creative industry that mixes technology, culture, art, and other aspects. So I don't know what the situation is right now in Sweden, but I think the image of, you know, a nerd playing games is far gone in Poland right now, and I think even a bystander knows that this is something that we are proud of and that we can monetize as well, and something that that is serious business, and it also gives a lot of opportunity for people to grow, and for youngsters to hone their skills. So definitely, I think we are past this very hurtful and image that used to be the norm.
Lovely to hear that. Linda, you have a view on this topic as well.
Yeah, I think it's quite right what Paulina said. There are a lot of good games and games that can be considered art, and there are a lot of good things, but the games that are just simply hooking kids in reward loops, they still exist. And for me, that's still a problem, because they are very easily accessible. Those are often the free-to-play games, and they are detrimental to the growth in young minds, I feel. And it is a problem, and we shouldn't shy away from it.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. And we have mobile developers with us here. Do you have any views on that?
Yes, actually, I think Linda is right. I mean, mobile is, I think, the fastest growing branch of the gaming market, and there is a lot of high pressure on commercializing titles, especially through the free-to-play model, which usually at the beginning it's the fast way to bring a lot of abusive mechanics into gaming, especially for younger minds that still don't understand difference between gameplay and the monetization. And in mobile, it's very heavy ratio here, because everything is set up to basically build retention and build advertisement views. So there is, I think, still a lot of things to do in terms of mobile gaming, especially that in 98% the rest of models are not existing. I mean, free to play is spread all around. Only 2% of the games are based on pay to play, which means that you can pay for the game and then just play it without any additional loops and hooks for payments. I believe that going path of mobile gaming is something that we cannot stop. I mean, because the accessibility to the games through the mobile channel is so huge, and there is so less obstacles to just get the game. So I believe that there are always two sides. First side, we have to educate kids how to deal with it, and there is we cannot put the all pressure only on companies that will make those games, but also educating people that are making these games is also highly needed, especially in the way of how children's psychology work, because it's way different than older people works with mobile gaming. And also to just give a shed of light here, mobile gaming has a lot of players that are in way older year than other platforms. I mean, we have a lot of people that are above 60 years old and are already in retirement, and they have the same problem as kids. I mean, they don't understand how the market works, and they are also hooked up in the same loops as kids. So I believe education, and once again education for both sides, so the people that are playing games will stop getting those hooks, and this basically will shift the commercializing mobile games into different regions. And on the other hand, educating companies that are making those games to be aware of risk that they are taking with each other to monetize the game. So unfortunately, a lot of education ahead of us, but I believe that also this can bring a lot of good perks for everyone in terms of how to use mobile phones, how to learn other markets by playing them with just with the mobile game that you can do everywhere.
So do we think this is a regulatory issue or a cultural issue within the business? Well, what would you say, if anyone has a view on that?
Both.
Both?
Yes. Yeah, I think, like, especially in gaming, there are no boundaries within the culture. Like, most of the games are made for global markets. So on one hand, we have no borders. Marketplaces are spread all around the world, and everybody mostly use same marketplace. But on the other hand, we have like those local things that usually, as mobile gaming producer, we don't use local things because we want to be we need to have games that are global, which means that every I would put it deviation from the standard model of human is kind of not performing well. So I think there is a lot of local things that we can put into the game. But on the other hand, it's very hard from the commercial point of view to have it there, because usually the only few people out of all the players understand it. So like Linda said, I think it's both, and we have to watch out for flattening out all the humans into one model of gamer.
I think that's important. Nikolai, you raised your hand regarding this as well.
Yes, thank you. Well, I would like just to emphasize, in my opinion, we have you speak of hooks in games, in mobile games, but some of them are clear hooks from gambling, and this is an issue as gambling is regulated in most European countries, at least. To an extent, we regulate gambling when it is physical, when it is in a building or other places, and it seems to be completely unregulated in video games. So this is a huge issue. Yeah.
So how can we shift focus to the more positive side? Because that is what I think we should do, because there is so much positive energy going into this industry, and that we can make use of. Linn-Marie, do you have any remarks on this subject? How can we push this sort of cultural focus, what you as a company can bring to the table to make it better?
Well, I think the one thing is to collaborate with Johanna, where Johanna is working with them, because I think that when it comes to education and collecting data and showing that this is actually the effects of the games industry, not only when it comes to financials, but also when it comes to health. Just looking at 2 years of pandemic, what happened to the games industry with the effects that we had after that, both in the games industry when it comes to the economic growth, but also to the growth of how we talk about health. One thing that I really like about the games industry, we talk a lot about sustainability as well. And that goes not only with how to make sustainable games, but also like how the different studios and companies work with their own sustainability. And it could be environmental, it could be how they hire people, representation in, I mean, the spectrum is so big. What is, we talk about the games, the effects of games, but I think it's also about the industry overall, how that affects regions, countries, municipalities, and all that. So I think it's a very big question, and the answer can be so big.
But you're touching on something here about the pandemic. I mean, post-pandemic, what sort of changes do you see? Because you're addressing some changes within the industry after the pandemic. What do you mean by that?
I can see, because I remember the beginning, especially the first 6 months, we discussed about the negativity in working from home. Very many companies said that no, that's not going to work. But we have shown that actually did work. And there was, of course, some health issues for some people. But I think that overall, us working together as an industry, talking about how to overcome the difficulties in working from home. And also, this is my experience. It could be others for other people, of course, but my experience has been that we talk more within this industry about the concerns of, health issues, and also how we can work from home. And so I think that's one of the things that I really like just after, and also how we kind of learn from each other from different companies.
Paulina, did you experience basically the same thing in Poland during and after the pandemic, or what are your views on that?
Honestly, I think that one of the benefits, one of the features of the games industry is that it mostly can be done remotely, unless you are doing some motion capture work. And for us, there has been a huge shift also in the way we do our programs for supporting game studios, because we used to have everything on site. And working remotely has been maybe a bit problematic at the very beginning, but on the other side, it helped us reach people all over the world. And thanks to that, we could open our offer to studios from Chile, from Malaysia, from Canada. So I think there have been some upsides to it, and it kind of raised awareness that we can cooperate on a level that was not yet so well known, and that you can reach to other environments, other backgrounds. And I think it has been overall a very positive experience, apart from the pandemic itself, which was horrible, obviously, but it opened our eyes when it comes to wider cooperation and breaking those barriers that might have been there before.
Yeah, but that is interesting, because I mean, if we actually realize more benefits working together due to the fact that we had to work from home, that's interesting when it comes to cross-border collaborations.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the only issue is time zones, honestly, that you have to take into consideration. But other than that, I think from my experience, a lot of the studios that wouldn't have reached to us otherwise now were encouraged to do that, and could find us and do things with us. So I think it really sped up the internationalization of some cooperative projects.
Thank you. And yes, time zones aren't an issue for Poland and Sweden. So what are the benefits of collaborating between our nations? Who wants to say a few words about that, if you have an opinion? Then I'll just point towards Nikolai and ask you, what sort of benefits do you see when it comes to collaborations between Poland and Sweden?
I can thank you, but I could mostly imagine, as a new company, we never collaborated with Swedes before. I know of Embracer Group having invested in many Polish companies, and this is a big deal. as there's simply more funding in Sweden, probably.
Okay, interesting. And Linda has her hand up here, so go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I have worked with a couple of Polish companies, and I've noticed it seems like the culture is a good fit, because sometimes when you work with different cultures, you can notice they have a very different culture regarding certain aspects. But the Polish culture and the Swedish culture, I feel they're a good match. It works really well.
Yeah, that of course makes it much easier. And when we're on that topic, so to speak, and discussing culture, how about the equality issue, Poland and Sweden, because that's a big challenge for the industry, and I don't know how the differences are between Poland and Sweden. Johanna, do you have a view on that?
I think we're actually quite similar in terms of the amount of women in the industry. I don't have the updated data on it, but I'm quite sure it's really close. But it's I think the culture issue that Linda talked about is really important, and I think when it comes to also to with collaborations and so we see a lot of good examples of that, and also people from Sweden working in Poland and the opposite. So it's quite close geographically, which is also a good thing when it comes to collaborations.
Agree, of course. And Paulina, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add on the gender equality thing. The reports show that there are still more men than women in the industry, but I think this is slowly but steadily changing. And when I attend any industry events, I can see a lot of women, mostly in marketing or art, but still taking the lead and being experts on their topics. And also we have those programs, for example, CD Projekt Red. I think they're on their second edition of a program where they encourage girls from high school to apply for their internships and in the games industry, and encourage them to start their journey and not be afraid of joining this community where the bro culture is still very present. But I think such programs work in terms of showing the girls and young women that there are a lot of places for them to thrive in the industry. So things like that come from the companies themselves as well.
Yeah, and I mean, do we have enough role models? Because from my perspective, also with a teenage girl, I don't think we have enough role models within the industry. Marie, you're raising your hands here.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't be quiet about this. I think this is such a it's a very important topic, of course, and I mean, maybe I'm just throwing stones at a glass house here, but I think it's very important to talk when we talk about equality. It's not that we have more minorities joining the industry. I think is what kind of roles they are putting into. Like I would love to see more minorities in leading roles, for example, in bigger positions. And when I used to work for Arctic Game Lab, one of the discussions were, of course, as you're saying, Paulina, like we need to start to educate. I say minorities because I don't only want to speak about women here, because I think that we need to start speaking about the minorities here. That we need to educate them from early on. Like we all know what kind of difference there is in, you know, schools from, you know, kindergarten up to high school. And I think that's actually where we need to start. And I think that role models are very important. Just knowing that when I started in the industry, knowing that I had Linda Kiby, for example, in the industry was a big deal for me because I felt less lonely. And I had someone, some people that I could talk to understand that what the games industry actually is all about. And so I think the role models are very important, but I think it's seeing a female from my side having her own studio, that's the coolest. For me, at least, I think that's what we need to work more on, finding minorities and making sure that they could take the positions that they want and not the positions that they are given, if that makes sense. And the rent.
Well, it makes total sense, I think. And from my perspective, working on the policy side, I often hear this sort of argument that, yeah, we are going to build a cluster or an industry in this region. And yeah, equality is something we need to work with later when we got everything going. And I think that's an issue as well. Have you experienced the same thing? For example, a studio starting up saying, yeah, equality is important. We'll deal with that later when we're actually growing. Or a city, yeah, we'll deal with that later when we're actually growing. Do you recognize that sort of mindset? Johanna, any views on that?
So I think that definitely exists, but it's also much easier if you think about it early on, because it's easier to hire women in early stages than if you're a larger studio who wants to hire their first female employees, for example. Much easier if you're 5 than if you are 15. But also I think it's not only, I think we need to work on this in all the levels. It's just not both within education and within investments, and it's a continuous work that we need to keep doing. We will never be finished in this sense, because I think it's always important to look at why and how, and to make sure that everybody is giving their or has the opportunity of achieving their full potential, and we are, especially in an industry where we are so much looking for talent every day, we can't miss out on half the population.
So true. I mean, and talking about cross-border collaborations, isn't there something we should be able to do when it comes to that here then? Because I mean, exchanging role models, also exchanging when it comes to networks that are meeting or supporting each other. I mean, are there collaborations that can be done solely within this area as well? And what in that case? Do you have any ideas? Our Swedish delegates, for example, do you know any networks that could be sort of connected to Polish equivalent networks, perhaps?
Well, there are several networks for women in the games industry, several in Sweden, and I know some of them are international as well, so they probably exist in Poland. So that could be one entry point, but I think for this to happen, it would be easier if we had some physical events so we can actually meet people. I mean, we're all used to the online chat thingy right now, but actually meeting people real time, it's better. And I think that would promote collaborations even further.
Totally agree. And when it comes to wise words from you, Linda, because I know you have a few of them, and perhaps you could even share a few of them with us. Looking at the business development side, what would you say are the most common mistakes that studios make? I mean, you have met startups and you have met bigger studios. Perhaps starting with the startups, what's the most common mistake they do?
Well, that's a hard one, because I would say the most common mistake when you hear about it afterwards are that they went with the wrong money. They got money from the wrong publisher or the wrong investor, and things turned sour and it was horrible. But the thing is, when you're in the moment, your options might be very limited, and maybe those terrible money, they were the only option if you were to keep running the studio. And so that's the most common thing that people regret, but I also totally understand why it's so common, and that's why it's hard, right?
So Nikolai, stay away from terrible money.
Did you want advice instead? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm always happy with such advice, actually, representing the fresh startups here. So, I mean, we've just been pitching the first game we made. We have done first pitching at Gamescom, which was a very good experience. No success yet, which is what we kind of expected. But what we firmly decided at the onset is not to take money, to take venture capital, invest in our company yet, or abstain from it for as long as we can. But on the other hand, of course, we are bootstrapping the company, using our own money to invest in it, and there are much fewer options at present due to the strong change in economy and the funding perspective from the European Union, which we kind of expected when we set up the company a year and a half ago, and it's not here yet. I mean, there were huge opportunities for startups in Polish game dev 2 years ago, and then they kind of ended, and now we are waiting for a new perspective, which is another element. There are a bit fewer possibilities right now. So we are considering other options as well. I mean, we are pretty set on developing, but we consider working for hire and collaborations actually also, just to kind of gain more know-how as well, because we're new to many of the elements in the industry. Yeah.
Thank you, Nikolai. Thank you. And moving to you, Edward, what would you say from your perspective? What's the main challenge you face in business from your perspective?
I'm still somewhere in the middle. I'm not fresh in the industry, but company is not yet on break-even point, which means that we need to use money from investors. So being in this position is that I already did a lot of mistakes from the earlier years with taking not right money, like Linda said, and let's say we are experienced here, and it's always like everywhere that when you need money, you always have limited options. So I think we already are in the place where we have right money and those are supporting. Obviously, it's always not easy. I mean, it's always something that take up your sleep at night. But at the end of the day, this is something also that drives you to have a greater success. I mean, it gives you much more drive to push it through the boundaries. So at this stage where we are, I think it's all about not make a bad move in terms of getting a right publisher, because for mobile it's something way different to get a publisher than for bigger platforms, because we are taking publisher when the game is already done. It's in the iterating mode. It's sometimes in the soft launch, which means that we are already iterating. We can see the data, and if I would put a mistake, like things that I'm avoiding here, is that I'm looking for someone who is engaged in terms of big companies, which is hard. I mean, it's hard for a big company to be engaged in some smaller venture because people are not used to take any responsibility in the bigger companies, at least so much for being, publisher is taking responsibility often for a title success in mobile, which means that we are looking for engagement. And this is also a thing I would mention from the early stage. if you don't take engaged people into your team, that is a mistake. I would avoid it from any perspective, big or small company, because at the end of the day, successful companies is all about engagement and people that want to, have the same motivation as the rest of them. So having 10 engaged people and having one not engaged is always driving those 10 down. Not the other way. I mean, it's really hard to get someone who is not engaged up to be engaged people. So if I would say about mistakes, I would avoid lack of engagement.
Lack of engagement. We'll bring that with us, and we can move that to Lynn Marie. Actually, I mean, you meet a lot of studios, both from a pitching perspective, but also from a coaching sort of development perspective. What are the challenges you see, and what's that one golden rule you would like to send with your teams?
Oh, I think that I can definitely agree with Linda, and studios receiving money. We do full acquisitions in Amplifier, but so there's no like pre-seed here. But I think it's important to understand who is giving you money and what kind of investor they are, to read more about that and learn more about that. Because when we meet studios, we meet a lot of course bigger studios, but a lot of indie studios as well, is that they are not entrepreneurs, and they want to focus on creating their games. But I think if you want to start a studio, you need to make sure either you hire someone who can take care of that one, or you find someone that could support you with the knowledge when it comes to finding investments, or publishers for that matter. So I think that the more you read, the more you learn before meeting a publisher or investor, the better. So I think because for us, it's as important for us in Amplifier to be the right owner for the studios, to be the right people. And I do agree with you, Edward, because when it all comes to creating games, we believe that it needs to be a trust in the collaboration, and we want to feel as much we want to love the game and the studio as much as you do. So I think it's get to know the people more, have more meetings, a lot of fika sessions before you sign anything. So I think that would be the more you know, the better. So I think that there's a lot to read about it, but take a few meetings before you decide, because not all investment models are for you. And that's something that we discover every time we meet someone. If we say, well, we do only full acquisitions, and people run because they don't understand it. But I think that getting to know each other, because it's a collaboration interest.
Thank you. And Paulina?
Yeah, I can add on what Lynn Marie has said, that in our acceleration program, when we select the teams that we want to support during their 9-month journey, they are then cooperating with a publisher or investor without having to sign any serious agreement, and those publishers and investors can see and monitor the progress of their studios, and they can coach them, they can mentor them, but they do have this almost a year of watching them closely and seeing for themselves whether they want to start a real cooperation after some work on the game has been done. So I think initiatives like that are a good opportunity to test the studios, because some people want to make games, but they don't necessarily want to monetize them, or they don't have the correct mindset to become a studio that produces games that can be sold, and maybe they don't get the feedback that they want, and they rebel against it. So the more time you have before you sign a real publishing agreement or investment agreement. I think that the better for both sides to kind of test themselves and see if this cooperation will work in the end, because you are not only signing a publishing agreement with a game, but with the people, and if there is no correct chemistry between those two parties, then it can be difficult to work together in the future.
Yes, thank you. Important. Johanna, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to add the importance of independence as well, that it was already mentioned, like taking some doing work for hire and finding other sources of revenues can also be important. We have at the moment, I think it's important that we can, at least here in Europe, can build our own ecosystem for the games industry, and because it's sometimes I think it can be very attractive to get a big pile of money from large investors from other countries, but also I think the importance to have European independent companies and game studios is also really big, both from a national and geopolitical perspective, and also the fact that if you want to do a second game and to have retain your creative freedom, that's also it's not always that investments are the best way to go.
Yes, and now we're touching upon investments, and Paulina mentioned accelerator programs, incubator programs, stuff like that. And what is the most important to have in place from a national perspective? What would you say, Mikolaj, starting up a studio? What is the most important thing? What sort of public support or functions should be in place to be able to get your studio running?
Well, thank you for the question. I mean, we certainly need no funding for an office, as you already mentioned. We do everything remotely, and but acceleration wise and infrastructure wise, some at least funding for basics like servers, say specifically say Perforce for Unreal Engine builds, or some support in getting equipment, or maybe programs, mostly programs that you usually pay for in monthly. That would be a very interesting element. I may say that the programs that Digital Dragons have are very interesting to us. We applied last year and we were totally unprepared, but so we failed, but it was a very good lesson.
It often is a good lesson to try, isn't it? Linda, you've seen your fair share of pitches and so forth, and you're also involved in fostering a startup environment, so to speak, in the sort of rural areas of north of Sweden. Can you tell us a bit about your experiences with that?
Yeah, I didn't mention it, but I also do some work for Mind Detonator and kind of an incubator / investor in the north of Sweden. And we have a game village with 5 teams moved into a village out in the woods. So they get a lot of peace and quiet and funding and help in working on their game. And I think all of those are really needed and required to be able to work on a game. You need a good solid team, and you need equipment, and you do need some software, even though a lot of it can be gotten for free by now, like Blender and stuff. But yeah, some support does help. And if you are the whole team and you live close by, then an office is excellent. For my own studio, Warp Zone, we did have an office in the beginning of COVID, and then we shut it down. And we felt like the online collaboration worked better because we had already been at the same office and we all knew each other and we used to go to lunch, and I kind of miss it. It's nice to not have to commute back into work, but an office is a good thing, and especially for startups, I feel.
Yeah, so it could be a bit of difference between our countries or between regions, I guess. But what would you say, Linda, from your perspective? What do you think that the teams moving to this game village? What is the most important thing for them? Is it the free space, or is it the coaching, or is it something else, or is it sort of the entire package? What do you think?
I think the exact answer is going to be different depending on teams and what their exact needs are, but the funding definitely helps. Yeah.
So looking at what's possible from an EU perspective, I mean, what can we do or what should we do when it comes to regulatory questions? I guess there are similarities and there are differences between our countries, but if you were a politician and had the power to actually decide today, what would you do to support our industries? Linn-Marie, should we start with you?
Oh, education. I think that's the key to so many good things. So I would say, yeah, education. Making sure that we put more money into education, and yeah, maybe that's an easy answer. I don't know. I think I need to think about it a bit more, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's an important answer, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
So, and with that said, I'm also going to say that we will open up for some Q&A. So please raise your hand or type in the chat so I'm able to see if you have a question, and we'll bring that up with the panel. While doing that, perhaps I can ask you, Edward, as well. If you had the power to decide, what would you change in Poland from a political standpoint at the moment to support the industry?
That's this wide question, especially that each industry struggles within its own regulations. I guess at the end of the day, I would just put something that everybody wants to hear from the entrepreneurs, that obviously the lower expectations from regulations, it's easier to evolve with the business. But also, if we can touch here a little bit an emerging market, which is based, it's connected to what's happening on the crypto market, is that sometimes we need regulations. And I believe that within, I'm saying here right now, as a company that's making games for NFT market, there are no regulations, or the regulations are so spread out between between the states that you just don't know what to do. So you guess. At the end of the day, you just take a shot and you gamble with how to proceed further. And obviously, you want to proceed further because the market is there, the incomes are there, and everything that you basically need is there, but you don't have regulations at all, which means that you can read a headline of the news, and your heart will stop because someone will write that regulations will be totally different, that you made a decision, or so from my perspective, and Polish market, definitely, if we're touching games within the NFTs, then we need regulations, at least some simple rules to follow. And I think it touches all the EU market here. Within the gaming, we would love to see from the mobile gaming perspective, I would love to see regulations about how to not engage people in gaming. I mean, to just scrap all the bad habits that mobile games have. And we, as a very experienced company, we want to make games that are good quality, which means we don't want to use gambling mechanics or scam mechanics in the games. But if all the market use them, it's just hard to compete with them without using them. So I would love to see regulations here. But on the other hand, making regulations is always some kind of overstatement. So you never know what will be cut off from the from this good part of gaming. So it's very tricky. At the end of the day, it's very hard to make regulations, and I'm far from asking someone to give us regulations. I would rather opt for rules, not regulations, or good practices, something that industry can set up. And for making an example here, I think that the most important rules in mobile gaming are written not by governments, but those are written by marketplaces. Because avoiding, not complying with the rules of marketplace, at the end of the day, just cuts you off from the incomes. And this is something very brutal. And on the other hand, everybody synchronized to that. So by saying that we would love to have industry standards, I'm referring to what we have in mind.
I think you are muted, Edward, or we lost your audio.
We lost the end of your... We can move on, Edward, and you can return to your subject. Perhaps if we give the same question to Paulina when it comes to, if you had the power, what would you change? Perhaps what sort of support would you put into place for the industry in Poland, you think?
Honestly, I think we are right now doing a pretty good job, but we used to have some bigger grants for research and development that are not being in play, unfortunately, right now. So maybe fostering the place for those developers to include something new and something innovative in their games could help them to stand out among other studios. So maybe some more financial help. But other than that, I think we are doing a pretty good job. I don't know if other Polish people here agree with me.
Well, that sounds good if that's the case. And I mean, there might be best practices that Sweden haven't learned about the Polish game industry that you could share, perhaps. Well, let's see if we have Edward's sound with us again. Can you speak?
Yes. I came back. I'm sorry. Quick change of batteries. Coming back to the Polish standards, I don't think that we have a Polish standard. I mean, we are synchronizing with the marketplace standards, and I'm looking for the mobile gaming perspective. So I think that it's very hard to make a standards. I mean, it should be a good practices to show the newcomers how to move forward. But on the other hand, the most experienced companies and people in the space will know how to make an innovation, and usually, those rules are killing the innovation. So there has to be a balance here, and I would love to have answers, but I don't have answers how to do it. I'm just trying to get my head around what is the business standard right now, and I see that, okay, the high priority is for the marketplace. The second priority is what we have in our country, and it's mostly connected rather to taxes than to how to do games. So I guess there's a lot of things to do yet. Still, sorry.
Yeah, there's always things to do. And of course, Linda, you get to be EU commissioner for a day, you as well. So what would you do? What would you change, or what would you put in place to support our industry?
Oh, that's easy. I would make it easier to hire people from abroad. And I'm not just talking within the EU. I want to be able to hire people from Africa and USA and all over, and not having them be kicked out because the last company they worked for paid 30 crowns too little in their insurance or some BS reason, which is happening all the time, and it's silly. That's totally what I would change.
Yeah, that's a really concrete and actually too real a problem in Sweden, actually. So it's good of you to bring that up. Another sort of support system that is in place in some EU countries, but not all, is the possibility of co-production. And that was something that were discussed during Arctic Game Week with a few nations at place during that event. Co-production that enables national funding from, for example, Germany and France, if you are two teams, one in Germany, one in France, that want to collaborate in making a studio or a game project together, which is something that we are not a part of currently in Sweden. I don't know what the case is in Poland. Could you please enlighten us a bit about that? Because I think there is a co-production issue in Poland as well. Anyone with a view on that? As I see no hands, let me just say that putting that in place would of course make it easier for us to work together within between our nations as well. Because as a fact, as of now, Swedish students, for example, can't collaborate with German studios in co-productions because there is no national public funding available for Swedish game studios. I guess that is the case for Polish studios as well. So please correct me if I'm wrong here, but that is something from an EU perspective that could change a lot. If for example, there were funding to be applied for, if you collaborated with a Swedish studio, Mikolaj, would you apply for that funding?
I would love to, sure, yeah. It would be very interesting. Although I believe at present there are a few collaborations in many areas in industries due to the function of European Union's market, which means it sets countries and nations against each other on the market, at least economically.
Yeah, it's too bad. Linn-Marie, you have a view on that topic as well? I mean, you work with Embracer, so you see a lot of studios and companies working over cross borders, so to speak.
Yeah, and sadly, that's Embracer, and I can't speak for Embracer, but I do see we have some studios spread over the world as well. There is some collaboration, but not when it comes to hire between studios and such. So that's not something that I have worked closely with, sadly.
We are closing up on finishing this webinar, and we'll see if there will be any questions from the audience or from any other keynote speaker or panelist on topics that you would like to raise. But I'm always interested in what is the next step, because it's so easy to talk about things. You share ideas and you have all these grand ideas of what you could do, but then that small step of taking that first step of actually doing something is so hard. And I would like that this webinar shows a different perspective of that. I would like this to be a small step towards actual collaborations. And when it comes to that, what could we do? What could we do as individuals? Paulina, for example, have you had any ideas during this webinar on something you could do or start doing after this?
A few years ago, I took part in an EU program called Interreg Baltic Game Industry. And we were trying to figure out the best way to incubate young game studios around the Baltic Sea, and we had the opportunity to visit incubators from Denmark, from Sweden, from Finland, and I think I think this is a great opportunity to see how it is done in other countries and find the similarities we have, because we do have a lot. Sorry, my cat is interrupting me, of course. He wants some cuddles. I think maybe exchanging some student teams or mentors, or giving access to publishers and investors from other regions, inviting them to demo days, to pitching sessions, and raising awareness that there are great studios and student teams that want to find partners, or maybe they want to co-produce a game and are looking for an artist or a producer or everybody. Honestly, I think just inviting people to do more things together would be a great way to foster this cooperation.
I agree, and visiting Digital Dragons perhaps is one of them.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Please do. I always wanted to go to Nordic, but it was always at the same time as Digital Dragons. So that is something that we also probably could work on, to maybe send delegations to each to our conferences and meet there, because as much as I see the room for cooperation between us, I think there is still some belief that maybe Nordic Game Conference is more focused on Scandinavia and Western Europe, while Digital Dragons is focusing more on Central and Eastern Europe. But maybe if we go out there and leave our comfort zones and find and look at Kitty and look at all the opportunities that we may yet undertake together. I think just going out there and meeting new people and talking to them is always a great way to kick off the cooperation.
I see a question now. I'm glad to see. Hi, Camille Casiscu. Let's see. We collaborate with gaming studios worldwide on data analytics. As it was mentioned during the panel, user acquisition and monetization is important to survive for games creators and publishers, especially in the mobile gaming world where platforms are so powerful. Do you also see it as a challenge in Sweden? And how do you tackle with those challenges? Okay, user acquisition and monetization. And sorry about your last name, Camille. I can't pronounce it. Sorry about that, Camille. Do you see these challenges in Sweden? Who could answer that question within the mobile sphere? Do we have any view on that? We have mainly PC and console experts from the Swedish side, I would say.
No, I have never worked with mobile games, so I would not be good in answering that question. Sorry.
It's an interesting question that we'll have to bring with us, I think. So thank you for that, Camille.
I would say that it's probably very similar challenges in Sweden as well, but we can also see that plenty of the more really successful mobile companies from Sweden has actually still are relying a lot on premium business models. So it's not only there are a market outside of free to play, and I think the constantly changing business models and to be able to adapt and work with different types of users and gameplay, and so that's something that is constantly evolving, and challenges here as well.
Thank you, Johanna. Thank you. So, Madam Ambassador, would you like to share some insights or your views on this as sort of a closing remark on this session?
So first of all, thank you to all panelists, speakers, and it was really exciting and to listen your views on many issues which are relevant to this discussion. So I really hope that the Polish-Swedish cooperation will bring a lot of interesting projects. Thank you for raising also, and in your discussion, your views, the aspect of education, which is extremely important. And I wish you all the best, and I hope to see you soon in Warsaw or in Stockholm, all our groups. So all the best. And once again, thank you for your time and your interesting views. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, and thank you also to the participants listening in on this webinar. Of course, thank you to our keynote speakers, our panelists for all your views, Paulina, Johanna, Edward, Piotr, Mikolaj, Lynn-Marie, Linda. It was really nice having you all, and I hope that we will meet each other at future events and that we will keep sharing ideas to make our industries thrive. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you.